الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, the author he mentioned الشبهة السابعة, the seventh doubt and misconception with regards to Tawheed al-Ibadah and making the worship and devotion sincerely and purely for the sake of Allah alone subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, فَإِنْ قَالَ أَنَا لَا أُشْرِكُ بِاللَّهِ شَيْئًا حاشا وكلا ولكن الالتجاء إلى الصالحين ليس بشرك. So now if he says, I do not associate any partners with Allah whatsoever. No, not me, never. But to turn one's devotion and heart to the righteous, this is not considered shirk. This is not considered shirk. And this is similar to that which has proceeded from a shubha arabi'ah. But in that shubha, he was mentioning that this person with these doubts, he would say, I worship Allah alone. I single out Allah alone for all actions of worship. Yani ana muwahid. I'm a person of at-tawheed. Here he's saying the same thing, but in another manner. Ana la ushriku billahi shay'a. I'm not associating any partners with Allah whatsoever. I am not associating any partners with Allah whatsoever. So the issue now is this person here, he is confessing and affirming that a shirk is something lowly, and something foul, something disgusting and forbidden and permissible, the worst of all sins. He believes this, yet at the same time he is performing it and falling into it. Yet at the same time he's performing it and falling into it. And this is for a number of reasons, and the author, he will touch on them. We discuss them insha'Allah. So if a person here who has doubts about Tawheed al-Ibadah, about Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, about Tawheed al-Ubudiyyah, about making the worship sincerely and purely for the sake of Allah alone, and whenever you discuss with him these affairs, he says, أَنَا لَا أُشْرِكُ بِاللَّهِ شَيْئًا حاشا وكلا. He said, I do not associate any partners with Allah whatsoever. حاشا وكلا. No, never. Meaning, I will never do that. I know that it's foul. I know that it's forbidden. I know that it's the greatest sin. I know that the one who performs that and dies in that manner, وَلِيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ, Allah will never forgive him. I know this. But then he says the shubha, وَلَكِنَّ الِالْتِجَاءَ إِلَى الصَّالِحِينَ لَيْسَ بِشِرْكٍ. But to devote oneself in devotion, servitude, calling and hope and fear to the righteous, this is not shirk. This is his doubt and misconception. And this is what they say similar until today. Whenever you ask them, why are you calling on Abdul Qadir al-Jailani? Why are you calling on al-Badawi? Why are you calling on Ali? Why are you calling on al-Hasan al-Hussein al-Fatima radiyallahu anhum? Why are you calling on the grave, the one in the grave and the likes like this? This is committing shirk. Stop committing shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, no, I'm not committing shirk. I only worship Allah azza wa jalla. I'm not worshiping anyone except for Allah alone. I do not worship anyone except for Allah alone. I'm a Muslim. I'm a muwahid. I'm a person of at-tawheed. Then he says, and to make al-iltija, and to turn one's devotion and attention with love and humbleness and faith to the righteous, this is not considered shirk. Yani, we have seen this before. They said in the fourth down, that calling on the others besides Allah, calling on the one in the grave, this is not shirk. And from their methodology is that they'll name things with new names, and they'll try to change the names of things, but we have learned that changing the names does not change the reality. Changing the names of things does not change the reality, and the ruling is based upon the reality, not the names. And the ruling is based upon the reality and not the names. So we see his doubt here, his misconception. It's very similar to the one that has preceded, and this is the way of the people of falsehood. Their doubts, they return back to usul and principles, and they just move with regards to them, or try to get away from the evidences and proofs in different manners and different aspects. So this is from that. So this is from that aspect. He says, فَقُلْ لَهُ, and if he says this to you, فَقُلْ لَهُ إِذَا كُنْتَ تُقِرُّ أَنَّ اللَّهَ حَرَّمَ الشِّرْكَ أن الله حرم الشرك أعظم من تحريم الزنا وتقر أن الله لا يغفره فما هذا الأمر الذي عظمه الله وذكر أنه لا يغفره فإنه لا يدري. He says, so now you say to him, if you affirm that Allah has forbidden shirk in a manner greater than He has forbidden fornication, if you affirm and you believe that Allah, He has forbidden a shirk, paganism and polytheism, associating partners with Allah in worship, if you believe that Allah has forbidden this in a manner greater than He has forbidden fornication, and you affirm that Allah, He does not forgive the one who commits shirk, meaning the one who dies upon that creed and belief before repenting, that Allah, He does not forgive it, that Allah, He does not forgive this sin. So he says then, since if you affirm these affairs, then what is that? What is this issue? What is this issue that Allah has magnified in His book, considered something major and great in His book, that He does not forgive? And what is it? What is the reality of it? And if you affirm here that Allah has forbidden shirk, has Allah forbidden shirk? Is shirk forbidden? Yes, it's forbidden. Not only is it forbidden, it's forbidden in a greater and more severe manner, even than fornication. Is fornication forbidden? Yes, fornication is forbidden. Is fornication a lowly way? Yes, it's a very lowly way. It's disgusting and filthy and from the detestable sins. But greater than that, greater than that greater than that in filth and evil, and greater than that in misguidance, and greater than that and more severe in punishment is shirk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned in His book, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَنْ يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. That indeed Allah, He does not forgive that partners are set up with Him in worship, but He forgives that which is lesser than that to whom He wills. But He forgives that which is lesser than that to whom He wills. Indeed Allah, He does not forgive that partners are set up with Him in worship, meaning for the one who commits this action and then he dies before repenting. This person, he will never receive mercy and he will never be forgiven. And all of his deeds will be invalidated, and he will abide in the hellfire for eternity. This is the punishment for the one who commits shirk and then dies before repenting, who commits shirk and persists upon that way and never repents until he dies. وَلِيَذُ بِاللَّهِ. So this is the greatest sin, the most disgusting sin, and the most severe sin, committing shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, if Allah Azza wa Jal has forbidden shirk in this manner, and you affirm that, and you also affirm that the danger of this sin is that the one who commits it, Allah will never forgive him if he died in that manner, and you affirm that likewise, then clarify for me, tell me about this affair here that Allah has mentioned that's so dangerous and so severe in His book. Tell me about it. And He clarified for me. We understand the point? He says, لِأَنَّهُ لَا يَدْرِي, because he does not know. This person here, he does not know. You're asking him, and he affirms these affairs, but at the same time, he does not know the reality of it. So if you ask him, now you're waiting for a response. So the person who is truly ignorant, he's going to not be able to respond. So here, you're going to first be asking a question. And then if he's truly ignorant, which many of them are, they will not have the response. And they will realize that they do not have the response, and they will not be able to answer. So whenever they're not able to answer, he will realize his own ignorance at this time. So now you move from asking a question to teaching. So here, this is the point, to help to guide this person and to establish the proof, in hopes that he will see the truth and leave his falsehood. So from the best ways to do that is to go through a dialogue with the person until they realize that they do not understand the issue properly and they're ignorant of that. And they see you as somebody who has knowledge and is trying to help them and teach them. In this manner, in this manner, many times they will accept the advice, and especially when it's coupled with evidence and proof. And this is very important for us, barakallah fikum, because many of us, we have family members who are tried by the likes of these affairs. Many of us, we have mothers or fathers or aunts or uncles or brothers or sisters or grandmothers or grandfathers in the likes like this in our lands or even here in America that are tried with the likes of these doubts. So especially for the likes of our relatives and family members, we will hope good for them, and we will hope that they will be guided, and we will hope that Allah will make us a means to guide them. So from that is to follow these steps. And all of this likewise begins with having a good intention. So not simply just to refute them and to belittle them and to call them ignorant, but rather to clarify for them, no doubt to refute the falsehood, but in hopes that they will realize the falsehood of that, and that they will repent from that and leave that, and that they will join the ranks of the true believers, and they'll worship Allah alone with no partners. And they'll worship Allah alone with no partners, and they'll fulfill the rights of that shahada. This is the first aim and goal, and this is from the affairs of the heart, whether it enters their heart or not, and that is in the hands of Allah. But a believer will strive to be beneficial for the people and to help them as much as he can. So this is from that way. So the Muslim, he's going to affirm these affairs. Shirk good? No, shirk is not good. The one who dies upon shirk, he will never be forgiven. He affirms his affairs. Shirk is something major and danger. There are things that Allah has forbidden in this life, and from the worst of them and most severe of them and the most dangerous of them is associating partners with Allah Azza wa Jalla in worship. And he affirms that. So now you say to him, what is it? Tell me about it. What is that shirk that Allah has mentioned that the one who dies upon it will never be forgiven? What is that shirk that is so dangerous and so severe that the one who commits it and dies, the most gracious and the most merciful, will never pardon him and never show him mercy? What is that affair? What is the reality of shirk? What is paganism? What is polytheism? What does it mean to associate partners with Allah and worship? فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَدْرِي. Because he does not know. And this is also clarifying for us the importance of studying the likes of these texts. We study the issues of At-Tawheed in order to understand the beauty of At-Tawheed, to love it and to apply it, to follow and to prefer it. But likewise, we study the issues of shirk. The issues of shirk, paganism, polytheism. We study the issues of kufr, disbelief. We study the issues of nifaq, of hypocrisy. We study the issues of fisq, wal-fujur, wal-kaba'ir, with dhunub, wal-ma'asi. This is the major sins and actions of disobedience and the likes like this, because all of this is contrary to At-Tawheed, and all of this is in conflict with Tawheed, and all of this brings weakness and deficiency, or even violates the Tawheed from its foundation. So before a person could truly be a person of Tawheed, he has to learn about that which is contrary to that. عرفت الشر لا للشر لكن لتوقيه من لم يعرف الشر من الخير يقع فيه. I learned about the evil not for the sake of the evil, but in order to beware of it, to be safe from it. And the one who does not know the difference between good and evil, then he will fall into it. So this is from that aspect. This person, he fell into shirk because he did not learn about the evils, and he did not learn about Islam properly and correctly. He did not learn about Tawheed clearly. And the one, he cannot truly understand Tawheed except by learning shirk in detail. And one cannot truly understand the Sunnah except by learning about innovation in detail. So this is from the aspect of that. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَدْرِي. He doesn't even know. He says, فَقُلْ لَهُ كَيْفَ تُبَرِّئُ نَفْسَكَ مِنَ الشِّرْكِ وَأَنْتَ لَا تَعْرِفُهُ. So now you say to him, how can you free yourself from shirk? How can you claim that you are free in entirety from paganism and polytheism? How can you claim for yourself that you do not associate partners with Allah whatsoever, and you don't even know what it is? How can you do that? Right? Understand the points that he's going through, and you can't even do that. So again, this is in order to help him realize his ignorance of this affair, not to call him ignorant. If you call him ignorant, he's not going to accept anything from you. If you come to his face and tell him, man, you're a fool, anta jahil, you're ignorant, anta safi, you're a fool, anta ma ta'rifu shay'an, you don't know anything. If you approach it in this manner, even if you get to the point across, even if you mention evidences and proof, Many times people who are approached in this manner, they will not accept it. They will not accept it. And it's not necessarily that they initially are not trying to accept the truth, because the manners of the person who's presenting it. So this is a foul way. This is a foul way in this manner. This is not how you begin. Whether you begin by having the likes of this dialogue in this manner and hopes to reach the heart of that person till he understands. Till he understands. And this goes back again, barakallahu fikum, to having a good intention and wanting good for that person. Wanting good for that person in the first place, meaning that he will accept the guidance, meaning that he will benefit from the advice, meaning that he will benefit from the advice. If he does or doesn't, that's another issue. That's another issue. And how you deal with him after that, that's another issue likewise. That's another issue likewise. But here is the da'wah, is the qal. فَقُلْ لَهُ كَيْفَ تُبَرِّئُ نَفْسَكَ مِنَ الشِّرْكِ وَأَنْتَ لَا تَعْرِفُهُ. How can you free yourself from shirk? How can you claim that you do not commit shirk whatsoever, but you do not even know what it is? And then he says again, كَيْفَ يُحَرِّمُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ هَذَا وَيَذْكُرُ أَنَّهُ لَا يَغْفِرُهُ وَلَا تَسْأَلُ عَنْهُ وَلَا تَعْرِفُهُ. He said, how can Allah forbid this for you? Forbid you from this. How could Allah forbid you from this and mention that He will not forgive it? And how could this occur? How do you think that Allah can forbid this shirk in this manner and mention that He will not forgive it, and that you don't even ask anything about it? ثُمَّ أَنْتَ لَا تَسْأَلُ عَنْهُ. And then you don't even ask about it. You know that Allah has forbidden shirk. And you know that Allah has forbidden shirk in this manner with the most stern prohibition. The most stern prohibition. And you know that the one who dies upon it, he will never be forgiven. You learned about this. You heard about this. And then in the end, after receiving that information, you don't even ask about it. You don't even seek to learn the details of it. So this is an indication of the obligation of seeking knowledge. If we learn about these affairs, we learn about a paradise, a Jannah, that's width of the heavens and the earth. And there is that which no eye has seen and no ear has heard, never even crossed the mind of a human being. Now that you heard about that abode of peace and safety and security and happiness and joy and bliss for eternity, now you should ask how to get there. What do I have to do in order to reach the Jannah? What are the things that could prohibit me and stop me or deter me from reaching the Jannah? And the likes like this. Same thing whenever we hear the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created the jinn nor the mankind except to worship me alone. So now that we realize this, the wisdom behind our creation is that we should worship Allah alone. The first thing that should come to our mind now is, what is worshiping Allah alone? What does that mean? مَا هِي الْعِبَادَةِ عِبَادَةُ اللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ وَمَا إِخْلَاصُ الْعِبَادَةِ. What does that mean? What does that mean? If that's my purpose in life, that's the whole reason why I'm existing in the first place, then what does that mean? How do I fulfill that purpose? To start asking the details about these affairs in order to implement it. So how could one know and realize that Allah has forbidden shirk in this manner? I made it impermissible. And that he knows likewise that Allah has mentioned that He will not forgive the one who dies upon shirk. And then in the end, the person, he does not even ask about it, and he does not know anything about it. He does not ask about it, nor does he know anything about it. He says, أَتَظُنُّ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ يُحَرِّمُهُ هَذَا التَّحْرِيمُ وَلَا يُبَيِّنُهُ لَنَا. Do you think that Allah Azza wa Jal, He will forbid a shirk in this most severe manner? Do you think that Allah will forbid shirk in this severe manner that has been mentioned, and then He will not clarify it in His book? Do you think this? Do you believe this? That Allah Azza wa Jalla, He will forbid shirk in this manner and mention the great danger of shirk to this degree, and then after that not clarify the details of that in His book? Do you believe this? Of course not. Of course not. This is an indication likewise to have a strong relationship with the book of Allah Azza wa Jalla, studying and learning the book of Allah Azza wa Jalla and searching for the details of guidance. The details of the guidance that were revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then these clarifications they're in the book of Allah. Do you think that Allah Azza wa Jalla will forbid shirk in this manner and mention that He will never forgive the one who commits it and falls into that and dies? And then in the end, after that, He will not clarify the details of that in His book? Of course, we do not think that. Rather the details they're clarified in the book. This is similar to a narration that is narrated by Salman al-Farisi, radiyallahu anhu. Whenever one of the Jews, he came to Salman One of the Jews, he came to Salman radiallahu anhu, and he said, Inna nabiyakum qad allamakum kulli shay, hatta al-khara'a. Hatta al-khira'a. He's saying to him, and mocking him and al-Islam, saying, oh, your prophet has taught you everything, even the manners of the bathroom. Even the manners of the bathroom. And because they are aware of these etiquettes and the likes that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has clarified. Inna nabiyakum qad allamakum kulli shay, hatta al-khira'a. That, oh, indeed, your prophet, he taught you people everything, even the issues going to the bathroom. He said, ajal. He said, of course, that's right. That's right. Allamana ala nastanjiya bi raji'in wala 'azam. Our prophet, he taught us that we should not make istinja with a bone or with any feces. ولا يمس أحدنا ذكرنا إذا بال. And that one of us should not be yamini, should not touch his private with his right hand whenever he used the bathroom. ولا يستنجي بأقل من 3 أحجار. And that he should not make istinja with less than 3 stones, so on and so forth. And mentioned the etiquette. And this is something that is an honor and also a clarification of the perfection and the completion of Islam. That there is no aspect in life except there is complete guidance, clarifying the best way to perform that. The point here is, barakallahu fikum, the statement of Imam Malik. The statement of Imam Malik ibn Anas, Imam Dar al-Hijrah, rahimahullah ta'ala. He mentioned about this narration. He said, muhal, it's impossible. أن يعلم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أمته كل شيء حتى القراءة ولا يعلمهم التوحيد. He said, rahimahullah, that it's impossible. It's impossible that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would teach his ummah everything until the extent he would teach them the manners of using the bathroom, and then he will not clarify for them the details of at-tawheed, and then he will not teach them at-tawheed. Meaning that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he clarified at-tawheed, and he taught the tawheed in detail, and he warned from the opposites of that. So a person should not think that all these great details and manners and conduct and salah and tahara and in hajj and these great sacred rights and rulings, they have been clarified, and then the foundation of the religion was left ambiguous. Well, it was left without clarity. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam clarified the tawheed in greater detail. In greater detail even than these affairs. أَجَعَلْتَنِي لِلَّهِ نِدًّا. Are you making me a rival with Allah Azza wa Jal? And the likes like these narrations that have preceded. And the details of these issues, they come in our studies in the book of At-Tawheed. So now you say to him, how can Allah make this forbidden upon you and mention that he will not forgive it, and then you don't ask about it and you don't learn about it? Do you think that Allah, he will forbid something in this manner, with this severity, and then not clarify it for us? No, we do not think that. Rather, we know that it's clarified. He said, فَإِنْ قَالَ الشِّرْكُ عِبَادَةُ الْأَصْنَامِ وَنَحْنُ لَا نَعْبُدُ الْأَصْنَامِ فَقُلْ لَهُ مَا مَعْنَى عِبَادَةِ الْأَصْنَامِ. Now you move along with him. So this dialogue here is now clarifying how to deal with a number of people, and the people of falsehood, or the people with doubts and misconceptions, the people of innovation, the people who are in opposition to the legislation, the people who have misunderstandings with regards to tawheed or methodology and manhaj. These people, they're not all one category. They're not all one level. Some of them are sincere and truthful, and they have just been misled, or they have simple misconceptions that if they're clarified and removed, they will see the truth and follow it, inshallah. Others, they have similar misconceptions, but they're basing it upon evidence that they heard, blind following others that they have heard using the Quran or the Sunnah, whether it's correct or incorrect. Whether the Sunnah is correct or incorrect, maybe they're using the Quran and the Sunnah authentically, but they use the evidences in the wrong manner. In the wrong manner, or even sometimes they will have evidences that are fabricated and the likes like this. So this person, he is a stage above him, so he has knowledge, but he misunderstands the knowledge that he has, and he uses it in a manner that's wrong, and he thinks that those verses or those hadith mean one thing, and in reality it means something else. So this person, you have to debate with him in the best manner and try to clarify for him his misunderstanding. So he's slightly different than the one before. He's slightly different from the one before. And then there are others who are straight up in opposition. and they are staunch in their opposition, and they are holding fast to their way, and they're stubborn and rebellious, holding fast to their creed or their belief or the ways of their people restrictedly, and they're not ready to let go. So this one, he has another way to deal with him. So the dialogue that has preceded is with regards to the one who does not know. It's with regards to the one who's ignorant. And then how to deal with the one who is ignorant and realizes that he's ignorant. So if you ask him, what is shirk? What is shirk? He says, he doesn't have a response. I don't know. He says, I don't know. I can't respond. So this is how you deal with him. Like if he responds many times, the response will be like this. فَإِنْ قَالَ الشِّرْكُ عِبَادَةُ الْأَصْنَامِ. This likewise has preceded. But to clarify again, that if he says, shirk, paganism, polytheism is to worship idols. And we have seen likewise that this was also in the previous doubts, that they believe that shirk is only worshiping idols. And if you worship something besides idols, it's not shirk. And this was from the original doubts that they have, and we have clarified the falsehood of that, and that the people in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, from them they are worshipping idols, and others they're worshipping prophets, and others they're worshipping righteous, and others they're worshipping stars and the sun, and others they're worshipping jinn. And we have seen the evidences of that in the Quran. So this is a false understanding, but this is from their doubts. So if he says that to you now, he says, no, when you say, what is shirk? He says, shirk is worshipping idols. Shirk is worshipping idols. Is shirk worshipping idols? Yes, it is. Shirk is worshipping idols. So he's right about that, and in general. But it's not only worshipping idols. فإن قال الشرك عبادة الأصنام ونحن لا نعبد الأصنام. If he says shirk is to worship idols, and we don't worship idols. This is his evidence now going back to the beginning. No, I don't commit shirk whatsoever. Me commit shirk? No, I don't commit shirk at all. So now he says, you say to him, what is shirk? He says, shirk is worshiping idols, and I don't worship idols. Right? Does he worship idols? He's calling on the one in the grave. He's calling on Abdul Qadir. He's calling on Jailani. He's calling on this one. He's calling on Ali. Is Ali an idol? A sanam? He says, so if he says this now, this is his down. So how do you move him? You say, فَقُلْ لَهُ مَا مَعْنَى عِبَادَةِ الْأَصْنَامِ. You say to him, okay, what does it mean to worship idols? What is the reality of worshiping idols? He said, no, shirk is worshiping idols, and I don't worship idols. You say, okay, what does that mean to worship idols? What does it mean to worship idols? He says, أَتَظُنُّ أَنَّهُمْ يَعْتَقِدُونَ أَنَّ تِلْكَ الْأَحْجَارِ وَالْأَخْشَابِ وَالْأَشْجَارِ تَخْلُقُ وَتَرْزُقُ وَتُدَبِّرُ أَمْرَ مَنْ دَعَاهَا فَهَذَا يُكَذِّبُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. So now you say to him, what is the meaning of worshiping idols? Do you think that those who worship idols, they believe that those stones and that wood and those trees, they create and provide and dispose of the affairs of the one that's calling on them? Do you believe that? And what is worshiping idols? Do you believe that worshiping idols, those who worship idols, that they believe that those idols that they worship, that are made from stones, that are made from wood, or those trees that they worship, they're idols? Do you think that they believe that those idols create or provide for them or dispose the affairs for them whenever they call on them? Do you believe that? So if he says yes, and if the refutation has proceeded, we already discussed this. This is from the biggest doubts that they have, and this has already been clarified in details. He says here, فَهَذَا يُكَذِّبُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. This belief here, the Quran denies that, belies that, and clarifies that it's falsehood. وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتُهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَهُمْ لَيَقُولُونَ اللَّهِ. And if you ask them who created them, they will say Allah. وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتُهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَيَقُولُونَ خَلَقَهُنَّ الْعَزِيزُ الْعَلِيمُ. If you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they're going to say that the Almighty and the All-Knowing, meaning Allah has created them. Many verses we have seen the evidences of this, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they believe, وَمَنْ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ فَسَيَقُولُونَ اللَّهِ. And you ask them who is disposing of the affairs, they're going to say Allah. So they do not believe that. Those who worship idols in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they did not believe this. So that's not the right understanding of idol worship that he's trying to go to. So if he tries to go there, you shut that door. You shut that door, and you take him back to those previous doubts and the details that were clarified there in order to refute this. Then he says, وإن قال إنهم يقصدون خشبة أو حجرا أو بنية على قبر أو غيره يدعون ذلك ويذبحون له يقولون إنه يقربون إلى الله زلفى ويدفع عنا الله ببركته ويعطينا ببركته. The previous one is clarified. So now he says, and then if he says to you, oh, those people who worship the idols, they intend and they devote themselves to that wood or to that stone or to those buildings on the grave, and other than that, and they call on them, supplicating, invoking them, and slaughtering for them, and they say that these things will draw us near to Allah, and that Allah will repel by way of their, that Allah will repel, remove harm from us by way of their blessing, by way of the blessing of those things, and that Allah, He will grant us and give us good as well by the blessing of those things. If they say that, and that they used to worship Lat and Uzza, they used to worship all of these other idols that they used to worship, believing that they will draw them near to Allah, and believing by that Allah will protect them by the blessing of those idols, or that Allah will grant them goodness from the blessing of those idols. So they take those idols as mediators. If they say this now, فَقُلْ صَدَقْتَ, then you say to him, yes, you're right, this is true. And this is true, meaning that that's what they used to do. And that was the reality of worshiping idols in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But you have to show him and say, وَهَذَا هُوَ فِعْلُكُمْ عِنْدَ الْأَحْجَارِ وَالْبِنَاءِ الَّذِي عَلَى الْقُبُورِ وَغَيْرِهَا. And that is exactly what you're doing with those stones and with those buildings that are built on top of the graves. Meaning what they were doing with those idols that they're worshiping is the same thing that you're doing. It's the same thing that you're doing with those graves, with those graves. And they were worshiping those idols besides Allah Azza wa Jal, not believing that they create, provide, nor sustain, nor dispose of the affairs, but rather believing that they are a means to draw near to Allah. And from the blessing of those things, Allah will grant them good and protect them from evil. So now if he realizes that's what they were doing, you tell him that's what you're doing too. And whenever you're calling on the grave, we say, why are you calling on the grave? He said, because he will draw me near to Allah. From the blessing of Abdul Qadir Al-Jailani, he's close to Allah, he's righteous with Allah. So you're doing the same thing that they're doing. There's no difference between calling on a stone or calling on a person. And we have seen likewise the reality of that and the evidences of that, and how in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, some of them they're calling on idols, and others they're calling on prophets and messengers, others they're calling on angels. And the Messenger ﷺ, he didn't make any differentiation between all of them. Rather, he fought all of them, and he considered all of them to be pagans and polytheists and people of shirk and disbelief. So he says, فَهَذَا أَقَرَّ, yani this person here, in this understanding that he's mentioning, فَهَذَا أَقَرَّ أَنَّ فِعْلَهُمْ هَذَا هُوَ عِبَادَةُ الْأَصْنَامِ وَهُوَ الْمَطْلُوبِ. So here this person now, he has affirmed any of the action of those who worship idols. And he has affirmed that what they're doing is worshiping idols. And this is something that is desired. This is what we're looking for. For him to realize that. If he realizes that that was the methodology of worshiping idols in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, if he realized that was the reality of worshiping idols, now he will be able to realize that he's doing the same thing. This was the purpose of the dialogue. Now the author is going to mention another means. He says, وَأَيْضًا, in addition to that which has preceded, وَأَيْضًا, and also, قَوْلُكَ الشِّرْك عِبَادَةُ الْأَصْنَامِ هَلْ مُرَادُكَ أَنَّ الشِّرْكَ مَخْصُوصٌ بِهَذَا. So also he says, your statement, whenever you say shirk is to worship idols, do you mean that worshiping idols do you mean that shirk is specific to this only? Do you mean that shirk is specific to this only? وأن الاعتماد على الصالحين ودعاءهم لا يدخل في ذلك, and that putting one's faith or trust, reliance upon the righteous and invoking them, supplicating to them and calling on them is not included. You need to clarify this, because before you ask him what is shirk, and if he didn't know, then you clarify. But if he answers wrong, from the answers he will say shirk is to worship idols. So you go through the dialogue that has preceded to clarify what is worshiping idols. Now we reach the reality of worshiping idols, and now he can see that his action is the same. But also you want to clarify for him as well that shirk is not only worshiping idols. Shirk is not only worshiping idols. Like if somebody called on an idol, he says, oh, that's shirk. But if somebody called on Prophet Muhammad, says, oh, that's not shirk. You want to clarify this point for him here. So you say to him, shirk is worshiping idols. Do you mean that shirk is specific to this only, and that to rely upon the righteous and to call them, invoke them, and supplicate to them is not included? He says, فَهَذَا يُرُدُّهُ مَا ذَكَرَهُ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى فِي كِتَابِهِ مِنْ كُفْرِ مَنْ تَعَلَّقَ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ وَعِيسَى وَالصَّالِحِينَ. So you say to him now, that which Allah has mentioned in His book rejects that, refuses that from what Allah has clarified of the disbelief of the one who attached himself to the angels or to Jesus or to the righteous. And these points, they have been clarified. This is also an indication of how important it is to master the understanding of those first three doubts. And what the author, he mentioned that if you understand these first three doubts, if you understand these first three doubts and how to refute them and to identify the falsehood of that, then everything after that will be easy to understand, because they're going back to those doubts. So this is why we had taken so much time in the introduction to establish the evidences with regards to that. And again, I advise those brothers or sisters who did not listen from the beginning to go back and to make sure that you show great concern to the introduction. The first 5, 6, 7 classes discussing these first three doubts, and the introduction that is mentioned, clarifying the proper creed and belief, and likewise the understanding of the pagans in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Based upon that understanding, these other doubts become frivolous and easy to see the falsehood of that and to refute, especially along with the advice and the direction found in the text from the author rahimahullah ta'ala. So he says, فَلَا بُدَّ أَنْ يُقِرَّ لَكَ أَنَّ مَنْ أَشْرَكَ فِي عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ فَهُوَ الشِّرْكُ الْمَذْكُورُ فِي الْقُرْآنِ وَهَذَا هُوَ الْمَطْلُوبُ. So now this person is going to have to affirm, and if he's sincere and truthful, and he's not going to deny the verses of Allah Azza wa Jal in His book, he's going to have to affirm for you and agree with you that the one who associates anything at all in the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal from the righteous or anybody else, then this is the same shirk, the same paganism and polytheism that is mentioned in the Quran. And this is something that we're looking for. This is what is desired. This is what we're after. We want this person to realize that the shirk that is mentioned in the Quran and forbidden in the Quran and has that great threat in the Quran is not only worshiping idols. It's not only worshiping idols. Rather, worshiping the righteous likewise is included. Worshiping the righteous from the angels is included, and from the prophets and messengers, and from those lesser than them. All of that is included in that threat. Now the author is going to summarize. He's going to summarize that which has preceded. He says, وَسِرُّ الْمَسْأَلَةِ, and the secret to the issue. And he meaning the summarization to understand the base of this affair. أنه إذا قال أنا لا أشرك بالله شيئا, that if he says to you that I do not associate partners with Allah whatsoever, and you find him calling on the graves, for example, calling on the awliya besides Allah Azza wa Jal, for example, slaughtering for them, so on and so forth, and then he tells you, I do not associate partners with Allah whatsoever. فَقُلْ لَهُ, you say to him, وَمَا الشِّرْكُ بِاللَّهِ فَسِّرْهُ لِي, you say to him now, then what is shirk? What does it mean to make shirk with Allah? Explain for me, because either he doesn't know or he has a misunderstanding. Either he doesn't know or has a misunderstanding. Somebody he calls, "Yeah, Ali, provide for me a child," and then he says, "I don't make shirk. I don't make shirk." You say, "What? Don't make shirk." He said, "I'm not making shirk." So what are you going to say to him? Okay, wait a second. Tell me what is shirk. You're calling on Ali, making dua to him, asking for him to provide you a child, asking for him to protect you. And then when we tell you to stop, he said, "No, I'm not doing shirk." So what are you going to do? You say, "Okay, this man here, he doesn't understand what shirk is." Okay, tell me what is, if that's not shirk, tell me what is shirk then. Fassirhu li, clarify for me what is shirk, so that we can see what it is. So either he's going to not know and not answer, or he's going to answer wrong. So this is the point here. So he says, فَقُلْ لَهُ مَا الشِّرْكُ وَمَا الشِّرْكُ بِاللَّهِ فَسِرْهُ لِي. So you say to him, what is associating partners with Allah? What is paganism and polytheism? Explain it for me. فَإِنْ قَالَ هُوَ عِبَادَةُ الْأَصْنَامِ فَإِنْ قَالَ هُوَ عِبَادَةُ الْأَصْنَامِ. If he says that shirk is to worship idols, فَقُلْ لَهُ مَا وَمَا عِبَادَةُ الْأَصْنَامِ فَسِرْهُ لِي. So if he says to you, "Oh, shirk is to worship idols," you say, "Okay, well, then what is worshiping idols? Explain to me. What does it mean to worship idols? Explain to me. Explain to me." فَإِنْ قَالَ أَنَا لَا أَعْبُدُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. So now if he says, "I do not worship anyone except for Allah." Are you following along? I do not worship anyone except for Allah. فَقُلْ مَا مَعْنَى عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ فَسِّرْهَا لِي. So now if he says, "I don't worship anyone except for Allah," you say to him, what does it mean to worship Allah alone? To make all of the actions of worship for Allah alone. What does that mean? Explain for me. فَإِنْ فَسَّرَهَا بِمَا بَيَّنْتُهُ فَهُوَ الْمَطْلُوبُ. And that's what it's mentioned here. If he clarifies, if he interprets the issue to mean that which I have clarified for him, and he meaning from those verses in the Quran, and some texts likewise it's mentioned, some wordings of this text, فَإِنْ فَسَّرَهَا بِمَا بَيَّنَهُ الْقُرْآنِ. And this is how the author, he clarified likewise. If he interprets worshipping Allah alone with no partners according to that which is clarified in the Quran, or according to that which the author has mentioned, and from the clarification of the Quran, from that which is preceded, فَهُوَ الْمَطْلُوبُ. Then this is what we're looking for. This is what we're looking for. وَلَمْ يَعْرِفْهُ فَكَيْفَ يَدَّعِي شَيْئًا وَهُوَ لَا يَعْرِفُهُ. And if he does not know what is shirk, or if he does not know what it means to worship Allah alone, no partners, then how could he claim something that he does not even know? How can he claim something that he does not even know? He says, وَإِنْ فَسَّرَهَا بِغَيْرِ مَعْنَاهَا بَيَّنْتَ لَهُ الآيات الواضحات في معنى الشرك بالله وعبادة الأوثان وأنه الذي يفعلون في هذا الزمان بعينه. So if he interprets the word to worship Allah alone with no partners, if he interprets it in a meaning contrary to its proper understanding, then you clarify for him those clear verses. Then you clarify for him those clear verses in the meaning of shirk with Allah. Meaning that if this person here, when he presents these doubts here, he still does not understand, or he does not know, or he interprets the issue wrong, you take him back to those principles that have been established, and those clear verses that are evidences for those principles. And then you clarify for him, and that clarify for him the true meaning of shirk and the true meaning of worshiping idols. And then you also now clarify for him that that's exactly what they're doing in these days. The same thing. You understand? So it goes back to those first three issues and those foundations and those principles that establish the reality of shirk and the reality of at-tawheed. The reality of the deen of the mushrikeen and the reality of the deen of the mursaleen. This has preceded. So you take him back to there. So again, this is reminding us of the importance of those principles in the beginning and memorizing those verses that establish those principles. A believer, he will strive, no doubt, to memorize the whole Quran. To memorize as much as he can from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is a general effort that a believer should be striving upon. But along with that general effort to memorize the Quran from the beginning to the end, or from the end to the beginning, or however the one is doing, this is something a believer he will work on. But along with that, and in the process, there are certain verses that he will show preference to. Certain verses in the Book of Allah that he will show preference to and memorize them even before he memorizes other portions of the Quran. These verses that establish the correct creed, the verses that establish the Tawheed and clarify the beauty of that, the verses that establish the clarification of Shirk and the dangers of that, the verses that establish the proper methodology and the principles of As-Salafy and the obligation of following the Sahaba, for example. These verses here are of utmost importance for a believer to memorize like he memorized the Fatiha, so that they're a part of his life. If somebody wants to talk about Salafiyya, you're going to go, Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, sirat al-ladhina namta alayhim ghayru maghdubi alayhim wal-ad-dhalin. ومن يشاقق الرسول من بعد ما تبين له هدى ويتبع غير سبيل المؤمنين نوليه ما تولى ونصله جهنم وساءت مسيرا. السابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين تبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Like this. فإن آمنوا بمثل ما آمنت به فقد اهتدوا. Like these verses here that establish that principle, you memorize them and they're your life. They're your life because this is their methodology, this is your creed, and that's the evidence for that. And then you hold fast to that. Same thing here with regards to Tawheed. Tawheed al-Ibadah. وَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. You memorize these verses here that establish these principles. وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتُهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَهُمْ لَيَقُولُونَ اللَّهُ. Like this. And now these principles are with you. And whenever you need them, they're there. These principles, which are verses from the Book of Allah Azza wa Jal, whenever you need them for yourself or to help others, they're there. They're with you. They're with you. Maybe it's going to take a long time to memorize Baqarah, but it's not going to take a long time to memorize فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. It's not going to take a long time to memorize that. And this is going to be with you for the rest of your life, so long as you're alive upon the straight path. So this is the point here. So he says, فَإِنْ فَسَّرَهَا بِغَيْرِ مَعْنَاهَا. If he interprets ibadah or shirk contrary to its proper meaning, بينت له الآيات الواضحات في معنى الشرك بالله وعبادة الأوثان. Then you will clarify for him those clear verses that clarify. Then you will mention for him the clear verses that clarify the meaning of shirk and worshipping idols. And he meaning those verses that have preceded in the introduction and in those first 3 doubts. And that which they're doing today is the exact same thing as that which they were doing in those days. And if that worship is the same, step by step, creed by creed, belief by belief, action by action. Precisely. وَأَنَّ عِبَادَةَ اللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ هِيَ التي ينكرون علينا ويصيحون منه كما صاح إخوانهم حيث قالوا أجعل الآلهة إلها واحدا إن هذا لشيء عجاب. And you clarify for him likewise that worshiping Allah alone with no partners is precisely that which they reject from us and that they're yelling and screaming about, just as their brothers yelled and screamed about whenever they said, did he make all of the gods one God? Indeed, this is something that's very strange. Indeed, this is something that is very strange. We understand this last point. Whenever you clarify for him these verses, clarifying the shirk, and then also you clarifying what it means to worship Allah alone, that what Allah has mentioned in his book and what is clarified in the authentic sunnah of worshiping Allah alone is precisely what you are refuting us for. It's precisely the reason why you call us Wahhabiyya. You call us a Wahhabi because we're telling you to worship Allah alone with no partners. So if you tell him to worship Allah alone with no partners, he says, oh, you're Wahhabi. If you show him the book in the verses in the Book of Allah Azza wa Jal that clearly clarify the different aspects of shirk, and all of them are included in the thread, and you clarify for him the obligation of worshiping Allah alone with no partners, making every aspect of worship for Allah alone with no partners at the head of that, the supplication and the dua, and the love and the hope and the trust and reliance. Whenever you do this, they start refuting you and calling you names and saying that you don't love the Prophet, or that you don't love the household of the Prophet, or that you do not respect the righteous. And they're yelling and screaming at you about these affairs. This is precisely the same thing that in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he called them to make the worship for Allah alone, also they were screaming and yelling at him, saying, أَجَعَلَ الْآلِهَ إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا إِنَّ هَذَا لَشَيْءٌ عُجَابٌ. Is he making all of the gods one God? Indeed, this is something amazing. Indeed, this is something amazing. Because the gods in their time, that which they believed with regards to them, and that which they did from devoting different types of worship to them, is the same thing they're doing with the graves today. Is the same thing they're doing with the graves today. And the way that the people call them away from that is the same way that the Prophet called them away from that. And the way that they respond is the same way as the way that they respond. Sentence for sentence. Wallahu musta'an. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.